Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's EnRoute webinar. My name is Bennett. I'll be the moderator for today. Our presenter is Aaron Clapp, Application Specialist at SAI. He knows just about everything there is to know about EnRoute, and today he'll be showing us how to use the new Flatbed tool. After the presentation, we'll be able to answer any questions you have either about this new tool or any other EnRoute topics, so feel free to put those questions in the chat, and we'll answer as many as we can. We are recording the webinar as always, so if you want to review anything that Aaron discusses, we'll be sending you all the link here this afternoon, so look out for that in your email inboxes. And with that, I think we're ready to get started, so I'll turn the presentation over to Aaron.
All right, sounds good. So we have the tool, the Flatbed tool here in EnRoute. So let's kind of just quickly go over what we would use this for, what the scenario would be for the Flatbed tool. The Flatbed tool is going to be specifically of use for doing print and cut style jobs where a graphic has been printed on some kind of material, whether that be vinyl or some kind of plastic or cardboard or wood or whatever the case has been there. And then we use some registration marks to cut this out. Now in the print and cut or in the sign industry, the print and cut is a pretty common thing. You print graphics all the time and cut them out of vinyl using vinyl cutters. But our main focus here is going to be getting that graphic from start to finish and kind of what to do with that. Now, there's a lot of camera systems out there that are already pre-built onto a lot of machines. So, for example, the BSEs use a camera system. I think now I forget the name of it, what it's called, but Multicam uses a vision camera. I think it's OptiScout is what BSE uses. Anyway, so there are several different companies out there that have camera systems for doing this automatically, where they read the registration marks and then go ahead and apply a correction to the file based on where it reads those marks and based on the file. So what this allows you to do is this allows you to do the same thing inside the software rather than a camera system doing it for you. So if you don't want to spend the money on the camera, which is, some of these camera systems, I think the one from Multicam is about $3,600 or more. So if this is something you don't do very often and it comes up occasionally, this is a really great way to do it, because then you don't have to necessarily get into the investment of buying all the equipment just for one job or maybe a couple jobs. So this is definitely not a tool that's geared towards like production. If you had a production and you're going to be doing this on a regular basis all the time, this might not be the best solution. But if you're doing it from time to time, or it's something that you run into or need to do occasionally, this is a really good tool, because you can do all the stuff in the software, do all the corrections and adjustments here, send it to your machine, and it's already corrected for, which is really great. Okay, so basically what we're going to start out with is I'm actually going to open up Flexi just to kind of give a perspective of what the file is going to look like before we import this in. Now, this doesn't have to be made inside of Flexi. This could be made in Illustrator, CorelDRAW, or any other application that has the ability to apply registration marks or circles or whatever. So basically the premise here is that I've imported a job here, a basic sign, nothing special. It's all vector. And what we've done here is we've created a contour cut around it, indicated by this gray line here. So I'm going to print this out, and then it's going to go to cut, and I'm going to cut this on my machine. So the cut line is basically going to be this gray line here. And then what I've done is I've added some registration marks. Now in Flexi, you have the ability to create some registration marks that are automatic, little circles. This is a great way to do this. You do not have to have this particular tool. You could just be an illustrator and draw circles. Just as long as they're a consistent diameter, we are good. So, for example, if you want to make them 0.25 inches, 0.5 inches, whatever you want them to be, the minimum or basically the base amount is you need to have at least 3 registration marks. And again, minimum is on the perimeter, and then if you want to intersperse them throughout the design, that would be perfectly fine. In fact, let's take a look at EnRoute real quick, and we'll just import a job that has a lot of them. So this particular job here has these set of marks here, here, and here, but then it also has individual marks all throughout the file. And so this is, this is kind of up to you as to how many you need or how many you want, but at least a 3 is the minimum for this kind of workflow. Typically in the vinyl world, we're typically using 4. So, again, this might be something you can test and kind of work out. If you feel like you need more due to detail and things like that, that is something you can do. So essentially then what we're going to do is you'll send this job out to print. So it's going to get printed on whatever material, whether that's going to be, that might be vinyl that you're going to stick to some other kind of material, whether it be plastic or acrylic or cardboard or some other material. And then you're going to lay this on your machine bed. Then we're going to bring this cut file into EnRoute. So you can do this in multiple sets of ways. If you want to bring in the raw file, you can. Or to make it easier, you could just export just the outline, because we don't really need any of the graphic in the middle to do the cut. We only need the contour cut and the registration marks, really. So let's go into EnRoute and let's just grab this particular example. So we're going to import, and I just called it test. Probably should have called it something else. But you can see here we've imported this in, and again, I saved this as a much simpler file because I didn't feel it was not necessary to have the extra complexity or of all the other lines inside this file, kind of messing things up in terms of complexity in the file. So I just importing in my fiducials or where the fiducial should be, and I'm importing the cut line. So I've imported that in, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight everything. And one thing is going to be to note is I'm going to go ahead and select my circles here, and we're going to pull up the Precision Input Center using F2. And I'm just going to take note of my fiducial size. So here in this case, our fiducial size are 0.5 inches in diameter. So we're good there. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I'm going to select everything. I'm going to go to Transform, Distort, and Flatbed Distortion. Okay, so it seems like let's just see, make sure that our settings are right here. So set our settings at 0.5, and it should recognize these holes, and for some reason it's not. Let's grab this real quick and delete it, and we'll just re-import the file here. All right, distort, flatbed distortion. Okay, and for some reason it's not giving me, let's move our part away from the edge here. Okay, so basically what it should do is it should give us fiducials right here. Now, I might have done something here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, for now, for the sake of our demonstration here, I'm just going to replace these. For some reason, this file was working earlier, and now all of a sudden it's not. So just to make things simple here, we're just going to replace these just for the purposes of our demonstration here today. And again, the placement of these is not necessarily super important when you first create the file, as long as they are brought over. So in this case, I don't know why these holes aren't being recognized like they were before, but now they aren't. It's probably I need to restart my EnRoute, but okay. So we'll just do that for now. So let's see if this should work. Okay, there we go. So I don't know what the issue was there. I'll have to check into that. But so this is the way it was importing earlier. And when I grab the flatbed tool, it automatically recognizes my fiducials at 1/2 inch. And you get this little icon here. So basically this is indicating that it's targeted on to these holes, and it recognizes these as my fiducial marks. Now what I'm going to do is down here, obviously I can set my size, my fiducial size, and I'm going to be able to change my position. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and I'm going to compare it with what's on my bed. So I'm going to move these around and get the coordinates of each one of these fiducial marks, or a couple of them, in order to generate a distortion pattern so that it matches exactly, just in case something is twisted on the table, or maybe the material is not set on there correctly. What I'm going to do is I can click and select one of these registration marks, and then I can manually type in the position, or I can move the position around. So let's just grab one of these and move it. And as I move it, you can see that it's distorting the pattern already. So you can see that it's moving this position around. So based on the fact that this is now here, it's making the adjustments for me that are necessary in order for that to work. So again, if I change this and we adjust it as well, you can kind of see how this is all changing to adjust the entire file to make sure that it's correct based on the positioning of your machine. Now you also have a couple different modes here. I don't have the specific details on the exact algorithm, but all these plans do the same thing. You get the same result, except for it applies it a little bit differently in terms of the algorithm. So you can see a little bit of a difference here. So you can kind of see how some of these work and how they apply it. So there's a little bit of a difference here. Most of the time, you're going to be using plan A, which is going to proportionally kind of distort everything or move everything in a way that would kind of make sense. Some of these other plans are more built for if you have some crazy distortion that goes in a very strange, odd way. But most of the time, what you're correcting for here is not a distorted print or anything like that. Is mostly just like rotation and things like that. Because once you put it on the material, maybe it doesn't line up perfectly with the file and the way that it's set up in EnRoute. Hardly ever does it do that. So you're always going to be off just a little bit. Even if you place the material just perfect, you might be off just a little bit. And that's what the camera systems are usually for, is to make adjustments for that kind of thing. So plan A will cover 90% of everything that you need to do for these rotations. So I can hit align and then apply, and then it'll create new geometry for me. So it keeps your original geometry there, so that you can go back to it if you need to. But since we don't, we can then just remove the old geometry. Now I have my new corrected geometry, and I can toolpath these. So this is where I'm going to select my objects. I'm going to go ahead and apply my tool, whatever that looks like. That might be a knife tool or something like that. So let's just say we're going to use an end mill. And then we would put in our fiducial mark. So whatever tool your machine requires in order to recognize fiducials, or however your machine works in that regard, in terms of that, you want to put those there. So now your orientation is all set correctly. Now we can export this, send it to a G-code file, and you can send it to any machine. So this is the adjustments that it makes. And again, it's one of those things where every file is going to need some adjustment, especially when you're doing this kind of thing. And this allows you to do that in-house or right inside the software before you send anything. So there's no camera system that's necessary. So if you needed to cut these holes out, you could, but you don't necessarily have to toolpath them. You can now send this out as a corrected file to your machine, and you would want to put those based on your machine. So one of the things you'll need to do is you will need to make sure you get the XY coordinates of where those positions are. So that's something you'll have to use on your machine to kind of measure where the XY coordinates and where the positions are going to be. So as you do this, you're going to want to get as accurate as a measurement as you possibly can. So when we do this, this is where you're not going to necessarily do what I did and just kind of freestyle it. You're going to need to get the exact XY coordinate, whether you move the head of the machine to the position or however you can find that location. Usually that'll be something you would do with the bit in the machine. You grab those coordinates, and you'll want to put in very specific coordinates here so that you get as accurate as possible. So again, not something for production necessarily, but a very helpful tool for those who want to get into this, but don't necessarily need to spend the money on it all the time because they're not doing it frequently. A really powerful tool, something that has been requested for a really long time in the industry, is being able to do this without having to purchase expensive equipment. Because some machines don't even support camera systems. And so that a lot of that, is part of it as well. And so this kind of helps solve that problem, making sure you get an accurate cut so that you don't have to build in really large amounts of bleeds and things like that, and you can get accurate cuts for most of your files that you get. So that is the new Flatbed tool. We think it's going to be a really powerful tool for people to use and kind of start into this, especially gives them a little bit of flexibility so that if a customer does show up and needs something like this cut, pretty much anybody could do it at this point. That way they don't have to say, no, I can't do that. I don't have the equipment to do it. Sorry, send them away. This way you can at least cut these jobs, do something like this, and it gives you a little more flexibility in the customers that you can reach and the types of jobs that you can do. Use your machine for more than just cutting out other objects and things like that. So cabinets or whatever it is that you do, this gives you a little bit of flexibility. And again, just to kind of go over that, the fiducial sizes, all they need to be is a consistent size. And at least 3 in the job. Typically, multicam, with their vision system, they have a couple in the bottom like this, and then they'll have a couple spread out. Like I said, in this job, I did 5, but 3 is the minimum. that you can use. So setting up those files again in Illustrator is really easy. What I would recommend that you do is, like in this file here, let's open up a new document here. That the one that I previously had opened, a little more complicated file, that one is actually set up in layers. So if I go here, my fiducials and whatnot are all set up in layers. And so here I can actually see setting up in layers kind of makes sense, because then I can come back in here and I can go into my outline, and then I can just grab this and toolpath it without having to worry about the circles and whatnot, and things like that. Last thing is, you typically do want to do this before you add the toolpathing. So you want to make sure and adjust the geometry before adding toolpaths. This doesn't really work once you add the toolpaths, because the toolpaths sometimes don't get adjusted properly. So make the adjustments first, then add your toolpathing, and then output, and you should be good to go. If there's any questions about this, let us know. Or if you have any other questions about just EnRoute 7 in general, this is a new tool for EnRoute 7. So if you have EnRoute 6 and you're interested in the new 7, there's a lot of new stuff going on in the new EnRoute 7, 64-bit and a bunch of other new features. And so I would highly check out the new version if you have a chance.
Thanks, Aaron. While we wait for any questions that you guys will have, I'll let you know that our next EnRoute webinar will be about the reworked polygon tool, and that'll be on August 24th. So hope to see you at that one. Are there any questions about the flatbed tool or any other EnRoute topic that you want to ask Aaron before we close it out for today? Wait just a little bit longer here.
Again, while we're waiting here, I'll just say that this is a tool that can be used on pretty much any machine. You can tabletop machines, bigger CNCs. It doesn't really matter, because all the corrections are done inside the software. So,
kind of going along with that, Patrick had a question. Does this only work with a drag knife, or can you use a router bit?
You can use both, actually. So if you have one of those Donic style knives that you use, or some kind of a drag knife system on your CNC, that'll work as well. If you decide to do the drag knife, you're simply going to just use an engraved toolpath. So you'll go into specialty tools and then hit engrave, and that'll send the toolpath right down the middle of the line. Now, if you're using an end mill or some other kind of tool, then you would just use a routing offset, and then that'll automatically offset it the correct distance so that you have the correct cut there. So that it can be used with both. It kind of depends on what kind of application you're using. So typically for like a cardboard or paper board or something like that you're going to be cutting something that's super thin that a knife can cut through, a knife would work great. If it's going to be something more like acrylic or something that a knife really can't cut through, then you would probably use an end mill or some kind of other tool to cut out that perimeter cut. So good question. Yeah, any kind of tool really would work.
All right, I don't think we have any other questions for today, so thanks, Aaron, for answering that. And we'll go ahead and close it out. Thank you all again for joining us for today's EnRoute webinar. Make sure you're subscribed to our newsletter so you won't miss out on any webinars or announcements. Thank you again for attending. We hope you learned something, and we'll see you next time.